All right. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. For the first time in a long time, I feel compelled to speak. And this may be simply for myself, which a lot of my recordings that I have made over the years have been specifically for me to talk through ideas, get a handle on things, help me understand. The large portion of them were to publish, to help, to use my perception and perspective of the world around us in hopes that it benefits somebody else. And that was my goal for a long time, years, was to make an impact, to make a difference, even if it was just on a very, very minor level. So I started writing, I started doing these posts. I created a business concept, a philosophy for living life, philosophical approach to making the best of what you have. And I kind of abandoned that. And I knew it wasn't permanent, but I lost my motivation, my inspiration to do so. I really felt, and it's cynical, it's maybe childish, but really felt that humanity had lost a lot of its value, that there was no point in me sharing or contributing to a better world if it wasn't going to make a difference, if it wasn't going to have an impact. And honestly, I just felt like humanity as a whole didn't really deserve it. I lost faith in everything that I believed in, and reverted back to just simply living my day-to-day life and making the most of it. And that's where I've been for the last year. It's been almost exactly 1 year since I've done a recording. It's been a year and a half since I abandoned my pursuit to take Sage Germond to a higher level. There's multiple reasons for that. It just maybe wasn't the right time. Maybe I wasn't quite ready. There was just a lot of things for it. But last year, it was in June of last year, approximately maybe mid-month. Switch this around. I sat right up there on the rooftop patio of our apartment building here in downtown San Antonio and made a recording. I had just quit my job. I was all fired up, and I just came up here to talk through it. And that was the last time I made a recording. And now I'm standing here on this same rooftop, one level down, because this is where I was a few nights ago, and this has been on my mind for a couple of days now. I've just been kind of letting it go through. I've really made some drastic changes in my approach to life over the last year, and I'm not necessarily jumping back into where I left off, but feel like I need to express this, especially right now, considering where we are as a society, what's going on in the world. We are dealing with a pandemic, which has got people frustrated and divided. We've got people that feel social distancing is the key to keeping us healthy, and people that don't, and it's split pretty much right down the middle. Now, I abandoned social media several months back I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the polarizing commentary on there. It's just opinion after opinion after opinion, and I was just tired of seeing it, tired of dealing with it, and it's part of the reason why I stopped doing recordings, because all of it is just my opinion, and all I'm doing is contributing to a situation that I don't think has any immediate solution. There's just no way to rectify it. We're at a point in human existence where I just don't know if we're going to make it, honestly. And this weekend was just kind of a recap of that, just everything that's going on. Like I said, we've got the pandemic going on. Now we have nationwide protests and riots on the heels of some very nasty police brutality situations. And, you know, that's not something new. It's gone on forever. There's always going to be people in positions of power that are going to abuse that power, but we're all human, and you really have to understand human nature and human situations to grasp what is going on. And I'm not saying you're going to understand it, but you need to try and understand the dynamics of it to be able to cope with it. And that's kind of where I'm at today. And again, there's I have a philosophical system. I have a way I see the world, and it's completely different than the way most people see it. And I thought that my perception and perspective of the way things are and how things could be could make a difference. And I gave up on that a while ago, and I really just focused on waking up every day, appreciating the life that I'm living and everything that I get to experience. I mean, even the little things. I mean, I get up every morning and I feed the dog, and I step out on the patio and I look at the flowers, I look at the plants, I look at the pool area of our complex, I look up at the sky, and I just appreciate it. And that adds more depth and happiness to my existence than anything else. It's embracing those simple moments. I finish that, I take the dog out, and if the sun's shining, I stand in the early morning rays of the sunrise and just appreciate it. I look at the green grass, the trees, the plants, the flowers, the cars driving by, and just really absorb everything that's going on around me, all the stimulus, as much as I can for the brief moment that I'm out there. And those simple acts throughout the day are what have improved my existence. I'm much happier, I'm much more content. I feel like I'm a better person, and I feel like that is the key to making the world a better place, is just appreciating and living your best life. So that's been my goal for a year now. My goal has been living my best life the best way that I can, and putting that vibe into our reality, putting my happiness out there. That energy vibration has an impact. And you can choose to believe that or not, but that is what I believe. And everything that I have experienced in my life makes me believe it even more. So here I am. I'm living in downtown San Antonio. I'm working a job that is, it pays the bills. It's satisfying. There's certain things that I enjoy about it, and there's certain things I don't. I'm not using my full potential. I'm definitely not on the path that I thought I would be on at this point in my life. At 48 years old, going on 49, I thought I would have accomplished so much more. But I also understand that living your best life, living the happiest you can, disregarding all the bullshit that's around you, and just focusing on the things that bring you joy on a daily basis. The whole concept of Sage Gourmand revolves around using meal times to reach that point. And if you want to make the world a better place, you have to experience joy. You have to be happy. You have to put that vibe out there of satisfaction, of pleasure, of just feeling good about what you are. And this past Saturday just reinforced that for me. So I've been making videos for years and years. I have hundreds of them out there. I have 2 different YouTube channels. I have hundreds that have never been posted. Again, some of these are just me talking through situations and coming to terms with certain things. So this is something that I'm used to doing, and I've covered a lot of things that have happened in my life and a lot of things about my personality, and I'm not going to recap all of them, but there are some things that I feel like I need to just touch on. I'm a very independent person. I feel that the greatest thing you can do in this world is stand alone. But I also understand the power in numbers. I understand what happens when people come together for a unified cause and the power that that has. I struggle with anger issues. I have for my whole life. I have always been quick to anger. I have extreme rage issues. I have what I call sociopathic slips in my timeline and in my history and in my rotation as part of my cycle. It happens, and during those periods I have a complete detachment from everything, and sometimes they are brought on about by tense situations, and sometimes it's just part of the cycle. And I can tell you that those are some of the most devastating points that I've ever experienced in my life, is that detachment from everything. You just don't feel a connection to anything anymore. And sometimes it's just anger and rage motivated, where it gets to that point and it ends up being a perfect storm, and you feel no connection. You feel no empathy, no sympathy. You feel nothing for anything else, and you feel like you could do some of the most grotesque, horrific things that any human can do or has done, and not feel anything about it. And that is scary. It is. Those periods for me are not all the time. They're pretty isolated. They don't really happen a lot. And one of my only fears in life has been that I will give in to temptation during one of those periods and do something that has consequences beyond what I'm willing to accept. And that's just who I am. I make the conscious choice to not act on my impulses when those impulses are as dark as they can be. And I'm not going to go into detail and explain what those things are. If you understand, great. If you don't, I can't make you understand. But I wrote a book called Mastering Your Illusion, and it's a very simple book, and it has 20 some plus chapters, and each chapter identifies different things, aspects of living this life that I think you need to face, you need to come to terms with. And it's basically how I live my life. And I wrote it thinking that it would have the ability to help other people come to terms with their own existence. And I've shelved it. It's just I put it away. But some of the things that I put in there is being prepared to fight, and that's both literal and figurative. And it's in the book. Eventually I may finally publish it and put it out there, but it's important that I put that into the context here, because That's how I live my life. I live my life as peaceful as I possibly can, but I deal with anger and frustration and rage issues, as I said, and I have to make decisions not to act on those impulses. But I also am prepared to fight every day if I have to. I walk out of the apartment, out of the house every day, willing to accept the possibility that I might have to engage in violence. That, you know, there's violence all around us. There always is, and I'm not afraid of that. And sometimes I don't like to admit it, but sometimes I desire that. I am drawn to violence. I don't know why. I can't explain it. And if you never have been or never have felt that way, then you wouldn't understand it. But I make a point to avoid that, to not give in to that desire. And it's no different than any other desire or impulse that you might have that goes against societal norms. I know I'm prone to violence. I know I'm drawn to violence. I know I enjoy violence, but I don't engage in it. But I walk out the door every day knowing that I may have to. I walk through downtown. There's a possibility I might get mugged. It might be a situation where something else is going that doesn't have anything to do with me, but kind of spills over and I end up becoming a part of. And that happened recently. A few months back, I was in downtown San Antonio, and I saw a situation and watched it unfold as some individuals got into a tense situation. It started with one-on-one, and then it ended up two-on-one, and then four-on-one, and then it got physical between one-on-one, and then it got physical with multiple-on-one. And I was standing there just like everybody else, just observing. I wasn't videoing it, but I was like, I was ready. If this was to get out of hand, get to a point where I felt somebody was in a position that they needed assistance, they needed help, I was going to be ready in an instant to help out. And fortunately, it didn't get to that point, but it came about as close as it possibly could get before it stopped. And again, this ended up being, like I said, just a confrontation between a one-on-one, and then it ended up with a group-on-one mentality, and then it got physical. And when it was one-on-one physical, I was like, fine, this is just going to play out. It's between them. But when it got to 4 and 5-on-1, I was standing there drinking my Starbucks tea, and I sat it down right where I was standing and headed straight to the middle of it, because I was going to do what I could to stop it, because one individual was being ganged up on by a bunch of punk-ass bitches that have no fucking honor, and pardon my language, but that's exactly what it was. Fortunately, it took me about 15 steps to get to that location, and by the time I got just to within an arm's length of the first of the individuals that I was going to start grabbing, they all broke up and split and took off. So I was inches away from being in the middle of a very violent situation, and it didn't end up requiring that. And the guy was all right. He was a little shaken up, obviously anger, frustration, all that stuff that goes along with one of those situations was there. But that's how I live my life. I walk out the door every day knowing that that's a possibility, but I don't walk out expecting it, because I don't want to draw that to myself. The more you focus on those things, the more you dwell on and again expect that to happen, the more likely that that's the kind of shit that you're going to bring into your life. So I live a very happy, very peaceful life, but I walk out the door every day prepared to fight if I have to. I exercise every day, even if it's just simply walking or stretching. I do stuff every day to keep my body in a state where if it got to that, I feel comfortable. I took martial arts for years. I don't currently train, but I know how to defend myself. I feel comfortable every time I step out of the house, that any type of situation that arises, I would be able to handle. And sometimes handling means running. So if that's the case, then that's the case. I mean, you have to understand the odds and the chance of winning, and I would never engage in something just for the fun of it, if you can understand that word. But I keep myself prepared. I am a gun owner. I believe in gun owners' rights. I think everybody has the right to bear arms. I take that gun to the gun range and I practice so that if I need to use it, I can. I'm proficient. I am a good shot. So all that aside, that's how I live my life. So Saturday rolls around, and there obviously, don't know if anybody would ever see this recording, but if you need the timeline, there was a death due to police brutality, and there's been protests nationwide. And again, it's not the only one. It's happened throughout history, and I think there's no way to really stop it. I think there's just a dynamic there that there's always going to be that wild card that's a possibility. But so peaceful protests have been going on nationwide, and they have been breaking out into violent situations. And this is my firsthand account of exactly what I saw and how I saw it on Saturday, because it was definitely a very impactful situation in my life. I don't think that I will ever forget this, and I really kind of wanted to record this immediately after, but I was still emotionally tied to it, and I wanted to let that die down. I wanted to let my emotions kind of resolve themselves so I could be a little bit more objective about what happened and why and what I think about the whole situation. So I'm going to turn the camera around again. So as I said, I'm up on the rooftop here. This is our apartment complex in downtown San Antonio. Got a nice view of the skyline there. Directly in front of me is St. Mary's. Our apartment complex is on the corner of Cesar Chavez and St. Mary's. We've lived here for almost 2 years, and we have a very large dog, a Great Dane Mastiff mix. She needs to go out a few times a day, and we have her on a schedule. She goes out in the morning, she goes out in late afternoon, early evening, and then she goes about in the late evening, right before we go to bed. And our routine is, and you can't see it, but the front parking lot right down here is a door that we come out of every day, multiple times a day. We step out into that parking lot, a lot of times into that front grass, and then we walk down around the block over to Hemisphere Park, circle back around every day, day in, day out. For almost 2 years we've done that. Saturday about 5 o'clock we walked out the front door, and it was just, there was an energy. I mean, as soon as we opened the door, it just felt odd, and I couldn't understand. And this was like seconds this all happened. And we walked out and heard commotion and couldn't, I mean, it took a second. It takes a second for your senses to pick up what's going on, process it, and understand, all right, this is what's going on. But this street, St. Mary's, was full, shoulder to shoulder, from sidewalk to sidewalk, rounding the corner over here on Cesar Chavez, and as far north on St. Mary's as we could see. We couldn't see it, and it was thousands and thousands of people marching. And as soon as we walked out, we knew exactly what was going on. Once we had processed it, realized what was going on, we knew what was going on. What I couldn't realize or understand or come to terms with is that we had been sitting peacefully, quietly in our apartment and had no idea any of this was going on, feet from where we reside. But we walked out. They were moving, carrying signs, chanting. Great. I am 100% for peaceful protest. I think it's a great way to make a statement and bring attention to things that need to be focused on. I think it's great. But the energy was tense, to say the least. We walked out right here to the drive, I walked into that front grass with the dog because she needed to go to the bathroom, and she was shaking. The energy was so strong that she was shivering, and her tail was between her legs and her ears were back. I immediately pulled her back and went right down here to this fence line and this little green space between the two parking lots and just backed away. But myself, I am always very in tune to vibrations and energies and emotions. And I found early on in my life that my personal emotions and reactions can impact the surroundings. I worked in the hospitality industry for years and years, and there were days where it got tense, and there were days where I lost my temper. Not unexpected. I have no guilt for that, but on the days where I lost my temper and was visibly and expressively angry, it changes the environment around you. It makes everybody else tense. It makes everybody else react. The worst times were the days where I was silently angry, where rage was boiling up and I did nothing about it, and it just kept it in because I did not want to explode. I did not want to overreact and put myself into one of those situations that I might do something I regret. On those days, it's magnified. My anger, my rage boils over, and usually within minutes, maybe an hour, who knows, depending on the situation, all the people around me start arguing, fighting. I've had some situations where guys that were best friends almost came to blows over dumb shit, really, really dumb shit. And I knew that it was being caused by my anger, my rage. I was putting that energy out there. It's a polar opposite of what I was talking about earlier with living my best life and enjoying life the most I can and putting that good vibe out there. I was affecting the people around me with my anger. There was one day that it was so bad, thunderstorms rolled through and blew out all the power. I mean, coincidence? Perhaps. I don't think so. I think that emotions have that impact on your surroundings. Other people can feel it. It impacts the way things evolve around you. So I 100% don't believe that that was a coincidence. I believe that those violent storms came rolling through at the precise moment that I was so angry and so full of rage that it was having an impact on that, and being so violent that it blew out the power was just kind of symbolic of a fire burning itself out, an explosion that explodes and then dies out. So, I mean, I'm familiar with the impact that I have on my surroundings. The reverse is also opposite. The surroundings also impact me. So I'm still showing the camera here on the street, and I want you to try and think of people shoulder to shoulder to shoulder to shoulder all the way across, and as far as you can see that way, and as far as you can see that way, most of them quietly carrying signs, just saying, I disagree. I disagree with police brutality. I disagree with racism. I disagree with injustice. But scattered through all of that were people yelling. And yeah, they were yelling chants, and I understand. I mean, yelling somebody's name in remembrance, I get it, I understand. But when you are angry, you are frustrated, and you are yelling, I don't care what you're yelling, you are sending more of an energy out there than you realize. As I said earlier, grouping, power in numbers. The more people you have together, the more impact you're having on your surroundings. within minutes of being outside and in close proximity, standing right here on this little green island between these two parking lots, I was so filled with rage that I just wanted to start running in the crowd and start bashing people. I wanted to get in my car and run people over. I wanted to get my handgun and go out and start shooting people. It wasn't racially driven. It wasn't sociologically driven. It was just an effect of that much tension and that much anger, and that was how I was reacting to it. I kept it in check because I'm used to keeping my intense, angry emotions in check. But it was hard. It was boiling over. And the worst thing I could have possibly done was assign that anger, assign that rage, and said, I am angry because. I knew that I was angry because it was my physical reaction to the tension that was in the air, which is what made it easier for me to keep it in check. I didn't react on it. I didn't overreact. I just stood there and let it go, and as much as I wanted to commit violent acts, I did not. But when you've got that many people and they're all feeding off each other, and anger is building on top of anger, and you're spreading that through that crowd and all of the environment around you, your peaceful protest is no longer going to be peaceful. Despite best intentions, there are going to be people in there that react almost, with the potential of almost exactly like what I did. And the first thing that they are going to do is they're going to assign that anger. They're going to assign that rage to something in there, to something present, to something that they can identify with. And as soon as that happens, as soon as you've assigned that anger and that rage, you have much more potential to act on it and focus it on particular people, particular individuals, particular circumstances, and that's where you start to see people erupting into violence. Granted, there is a handful of people that will probably show up to things like that because they're expecting that. They want that. They thrive on that. They are instigators. They are trying to create that violent situation. Who knows why? It could be any number of reasons. But what started off as something peaceful is now evolving into something extremely violent. Now, once the crowd kind of died down, the bulk of them that were the end of that protest, even though the street was clear, that far sidewalk was still full. Shoulder to shoulder, as far back as you could see, as far north, I don't know. I don't even know. We never did see the end of it. So there were still people coming, but the bulk of it had gone. We left this little island and started walking